All right, we are live here once again, my friends, to another live episode here on the Red Delta Project podcast live feed and Q&A, where we take a fundamental approach to fitness to help give you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyles. Always, I'm Matt Schifferly, founder of the Red Delta Project, and today's episode is brought to you by Duonomic and their new rings. They've been making the Elvia pull-up handles, the doorway pull-up bars, for several years now, and they're the only doorway pull-up handles that I recommend. And now they've got a ring setup that goes with their Elvia pull-up handles, purpose-built, much more designed for compact doorway work. Essentially, I'm really excited about it because it brings the functionality of that bodyweight master that you always see in my videos, which is unfortunately no longer built, and basically brought it into a much more compact, portable, and less expensive form factor. So link is down below if you want to learn more about Duonomic Elvia pull-up handles, as well as their new rings, as well as the coupon code down below to get 10% off anything in their lineup as well. So speaking of which, Duonomic and everything like that, we're talking about the curse of minimalism today, the minimalistic approach. I used to even say this for the longest time because I know I'm going to seem a little hypocritical in today's episode. People are like, Matt, what are you talking about? Like, you're minimalist. Like, everything you do is minimalism. You've got a book called Micro Workouts. You've got a workout log, which is just a single sheet of paper. You're a bodyweight guy in isometrics, which is very, very pared down kind of stuff. And you even have very minimalist approaches to diet, like my 3P strategy, where basically if you think of protein, plant, and portion size at each meal, your diet's going to take care of itself. So how can you say the curse of minimalism? And true to that point, hell, even in previous episodes of this podcast, I used to even say that we take a, quote, minimalist approach to diet and exercise. And this is something that I've always kind of had as a approach to life, my life philosophy for the longest time. I'm a minimalist. I have a minimalist approach and so forth. And looking back on it now, I've actually come to regret it very much so and know that it was holding me back. But before I jump into that, I do have to kind of paraphrase or give a little disclaimer here, is I'm using the term minimalism here with a very specific approach and definition. In trying to do research for this episode, I was kind of like trying to get clear on what exactly minimalism is, and I kept getting a lot of different perspectives and viewpoints throughout the internet, in fact, some of which are completely out of context from what I'm talking about, and even promote the various ideas I'm going to be talking about here. So I'm sure that some people are going to listen to this episode or watch it on YouTube, and they're going to jump right into the comments and be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not minimalism. If someone can give me a very definitive way of what minimalism is, then by all means. And if you can come up with a different term for what I'm going to be talking about, please leave it down below in the comment section, because I'm using it kind of more of as the what people think it is versus maybe what it may actually be kind of idea. And what I'm talking about is the way I always thought minimalism was kind of like trying to do more with less. Anytime that I could go with less, that was kind of the approach I took. You know, less equipment, less exercises, less approaches, anything that was like, why would I do more? Or why would I spend more? Or why would I have more when I can get by? Or how do I do this less? Like whenever I wanted something, for example, like a lot of times rings and suspension trainers, I look at something and be like, oh, okay, that's like $50 online or something. Okay, so how can I do that and make my own for like $15? How can I do my workouts with less equipment, with less exercises, less? That's essentially what my approach with minimalism was always, how do I do or get by with less? And it's understandable where this sort of thing comes from, because it goes counter to the opposite perspective, which I'll get into here. But let me get welcoming a few people here onto the live feed. We got Adnan, how's it going? Jake with a question. Hey, Matt, what would be the best deficit to be in to retain muscle? Well, not too bad. Basically, you're going to retain muscle more from your workouts rather than the deficit, as long as it's not too extreme. So what I usually recommend in that case is get online and look at several calculators for your BMR, your base metabolic rate, kind of get a ballpark average of what that is. Because of course, any calculation online is going to be a guesstimation at best. But see if you can get an estimation on that and try not to go below that number. Okay, so it's say BMR is 1800, 1800 to 2000 kind of thing. And then make up that deficit with physical activity sort of approach. Grease the groove, Matt. I love it. Love it. Great approach for practice. Remember, grease the groove is about getting used to what you're doing, getting proficient at it. That's the purpose of it. So when I talk about minimalism, I'm looking at it from the perspective that I always had of it's always a race of less is better. Now, in many cases, it's the antidote to the idea of more is better. And that's very much prevalent within our consumerist attitudes and culture and stuff of like, I want a bigger house and I want to make a lot more money and I want like 50 friends on Facebook or 100,000 friends, more followers, more likes, more. And we're always going for more. It's this insatiable need to add and buy more and have more stuff and be more and more strength and more. I need to get leaner and leaner and more. It's never enough. So rightfully so, a lot of people recognize, well, there's a problem with that because it's never enough, especially when you take into account the ideas of hedonistic adaptation, you know, where you buy something and you're happy for a while and you're like, this is awesome. But then you kind of get used to having it. And then after a while, it's like, no big deal. Look at that new shiny one that just came out. I have to have that. And it's just, you're caught on a treadmill because it's just always going for more. So on the surface, a lot of us discover, quote, minimalism as an antidote to that of you can take your foot off the gas and instead of always pursuing more, and ignoring the fact that that just comes with exponentially higher costs, then you can go with less. And like a lot of times when we're going to an excessive amount of something, backing off that endless pursuit can be a relief at first. It's a relief at first, like, oh, I don't have to keep pressuring myself to keep buying the latest fashions, to keep going with longer, harder workouts, to keep going with trying to have endless amounts of more strength and more. If I can cut back on that, then I take the pressure off a little bit, and then we start going in the other direction. However, there's some big problems that come from that as well. Santiago coming on. Hey, Matt, if I do just 2 movements for each chain, besides tension and stability phase, is that minimalism training? So this is, again, where we're coming across the idea of what is minimalist? Like a lot of people would be like 2 movements. Hell, you should only be able to get by with 1. And hell, you should be able to get by with even half of 1. Like you'd have like half reps or something. It's like, again, this is the point I'm trying to make is when we go after something, we call it like less is more, fundamentally, that's no different than being on the treadmill of always going for more. So when we're never happy and we're like, I have to just make a lot more money and I need a lot more muscle and I need a lot more strength and I need a lot more health and more, we're on this treadmill. But minimalism, or AKA just the pursuit of less, fundamentally, that's the exact same thing. Is less is always better. Less. Both of those are fundamentally the same because you're not basing your decisions off of what's actually appropriate or better for you. You're just going off of some sort of a philosophical approach that says just keep going in this certain direction and don't worry about whether or not you're lost. Don't worry about the costs. Don't worry about if it's appropriate or what's going to actually be beneficial for you. Just keep going in that direction. And that's why we get in trouble with the more is always better attitude and the less is always better attitude. Because when we look at that and it's like 2 exercises per tension chain, is that minimalist training? Who the hell cares? It doesn't matter. The real question to ask is 2 appropriate for the amount of the stimulus that you're trying to create in your workouts? And that's the difference, not from minimalism, but simplicity. And simplicity is a very, very different approach, which we'll be talking about today. Let's see, what else can we do to help people? Read us. Hello. What do you think about mass gainers while doing intensive workouts? I mean, hundreds of pull-ups, push-ups, squats, body weight, yada, yada, yada. I don't understand what a mass gainer would even be. Are you talking about the supplements, which are basically just eat more? Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, there's no such thing as really a type of exercise or workout that tells you to get bigger. It's like exercise for weight loss. There's no such thing as exercise that tells your body to be smaller. Or to lose weight, that it's impossible to fundamentally create a stimulus for that. So when we're talking about mass gaining workouts, well, that can be anything, because in order to build muscle, all it needs to be is something that just creates more of a demand, work capacity on your muscular work capacity. How much tension is in the muscle and how long is it there for? So you could do 5,000 push-ups a day and never tell your body to build any muscle whatsoever from what you have now. On the other hand, you could do 20 push-ups every few days and tell your body to build muscle. You don't build muscle because of the workout you do. You build muscle or create the stimulus to build muscle because you're like, muscle, I know you were capable of doing X. Now I need you to step it up just a little bit more. And I don't care what those numbers are. It just needs to be better than what you had before. As far as your work capacity, tension and time are a combination between the two. And fundamentally, that's kind of what we're doing in our workouts anyway. It's like, this is what I did. This is what I need to improve. There you go. But ultimately, there's no such thing as like, this exercise makes you build muscle. That's just marketing. That's just pure marketing BS. It's guesswork. I don't know, like shake the magic 8-ball. You know, it's like, oh, what do I need to build muscle? And it comes up with, ask again, Baldy. My 8-ball is not very nice to me these days. So I shake it again and I look at it and it says, do this exact specific routine. It's like, how does it know? It doesn't know. That's the problem. Is so much of the stuff out there online is just blatant guesswork and crossing fingers on what it is. So it's hard to say that this is going to build muscle. That one's not going to build muscle. Basically look instead at what are you doing now and then make your muscles work at a higher level of capacity. So coming back to the idea of simplicity, this Alp is asking, what do you think about simple and sinister, the kettlebell workout? Now, to be perfectly honest, I don't really know it all that well. I haven't done my homework on it very much. But what usually ends up happening with such things, a lot of things that are, quote, minimalism, isn't minimalism. It's simplicity. And simplicity is very, very different. See, minimalism, again, by the definition I'm using for this, not saying it's like the be-all definition, is the rush for less. And I see this take hold of people a lot when it comes to their diet and exercise habits, because a lot of times we go and we got caught on that trap in that treadmill of more is always better. And then we start to have relief by cutting back. And as a result, we're like, well, what else can I get rid of? What else can I cut back on? What else can I? And people will start to be like, okay, I'm just working with free weights and body weight. Okay, now I'm just body weight. Okay, now I'm just body weight without any other weighted stuff or suspension training, just a pull-up bar. Okay, now it's like one workout a week. Okay, one set, one exercise. How do I just get less and less and less and less and less? But the problem is, whenever we approach diet and exercise, and probably life in general, without a purpose behind our decisions and an objective to fulfill, we just basically end up constantly going in a certain direction. It's kind of like saying, well, just keep heading west. Well, if you keep heading west here in the United States, eventually you drive into the ocean. It's not going to end well because we don't have a purpose. We don't say, I want to go to Denver, or specifically like, Voodoo Donut in Denver. You're giving yourself a purpose so you know how far you need to go, but you also know when to stop. And that's a very important aspect that is oftentimes missing within our fitness culture, but even life in general. Like buying more stuff, great, but where's the stopping point? Cutting back on calories, cutting back on carbs or sugar or whatever, great, but where's the stopping point? Building muscle and strength, awesome, wonderful, but where's the stopping point? In other words, how much is enough? We want to have at least the attitude that we want to look for that point, because if we don't know where that is, you're going to overdrive your destination. It's like, well, what's so wrong about that? The old adage of too much of a good thing is a very good thing. Yeah, that sounds great on a social media post, but that's not how life works due to the principle of hormesis, which is one of the most unknown, forgotten things that can both build or ruin your health and fitness, not to mention your entire life, if you do not understand it. Let's get to a couple more questions here. So basically, to answer the question, Simple and Sinister, it's a simple program. I like it. I think it's a very good way to go about it. Let's see. Dave, how's it going, Dave? Hey, Matt, sounds like you're talking about efficiency. Too minimal, not effective. Too much doesn't drive a nail any better. Yes, he's using the nail efficiency analogy that I always talk about. Like when you hit a nail into the wood, you don't concern yourself with how many times you should hit the nail. And someone could say it's the appropriate number of times to hit a nail is 3 times. And someone's like, no, high volume, tiny little taps, hundreds of repetitions. No, when the objective is drive it into the ground, drive the nail into the wood, you do it however you want to do it, however you can effectively do it, because you have an objective. You have a purpose behind what you're doing. You're not trying to adhere to a philosophical ideal. You're just trying to get the job done. And when you make that your purpose of, I just want to get the job done, then let all the other variables just fall wherever the hell they want. You know, if it takes more, do more. If it doesn't take as much, do less. If you want to have a solid gold weight machine and a $500 an hour personal trainer come in and stuff, is it necessary? No. But is there a reason you shouldn't do it? No, because if you like it, that's good. And that's the beauty of simplicity, is it gives you the freedom to do what you want because you know what you have to do. Mariano chiming in here. Hey, Matt, it's like a lot of things in life. To crave something many times, you have to get fed up with the opposite. Oh, absolutely. Very, very sure. But when we go to an extreme of one degree, the extreme of the other degree may not be the solution, per the principle of hormesis, as I was just talking about. So hormesis is one of those things that everybody should be taught about in kindergarten and reminded about it every single year of their education until they're 80 years old. Because if they understood it, we would avoid so many problems. And basically, paraphrasing greatly on this, is hormesis states that an amount of something or a dose of something can produce the complete opposite result of a different dose or amount of the exact same thing. So a lot of times you hear this in the medical community. Medicine can be poison depending on the dose. You know, what is healthy can be toxic depending on the dose. And a lot of times in our fitness culture, we miss this. We just glaze right over it and say, X is good, Y is bad, always, to any degree, right? And you get this sort of thing, like sugar is bad, kale is good, kind of stuff. But hormesis teaches us, no, that's not always the case. There are amounts of things that can be bad. A lot of times when we talk about toxins, you know, toxicity is just the amount of something. It's not the thing itself. You know, anything that's good can be toxic. A funny story, a buddy of mine went to the doctor one year. I mean, this is back when we were in high school. He's sitting there on the table, and he's waiting, and the doctor comes in, and the doctor's hardly paying attention. He was like, Chad, what seems to be the problem, Chad? And Chad looks at him, he's like, Doc, I'm orange. Like, can you see this? And I'm talking like way beyond Donald Trump kind of orange, like orange. He had vitamin A toxicity because he was just eating so much vitamin A. I forget exactly what caused it, but vitamin A, you ask most people, vitamin A, good? Yeah, it's vitamins. What's better than that? It's vitamin A. Yeah, but he had so much of it, he built up a toxic amount of it, which of course is relatively easy to do compared to water-soluble vitamins that just get flushed out of your system pretty readily, like vitamin C. But A is a fat-soluble vitamin, so you just kind of hold on to it until you need it. So he built up toxic amounts, and he turned orange. It was kind of a funny story, but that's what hormesis is. So in this drive of more and the drive of less, yes, less can be better as long as it's being beneficial, but eventually it holds you back. And this is what ended up happening with me for years. Friends and family would even come up to me and they're like, Matt, what the heck? Like, in life in general, it's like you just keep holding yourself back. Like opportunities would come up in business, in relationships, in school, all these other sorts of things, and I would purposely hold back. Why? Because it meant growth, it meant advancement, it meant going with more kind of things. And I would hold back. Why? Because I was a minimalist. I wanted as little as possible of everything. And I had a lot of guilty conscience, like, oh, why in the world should I have a mountain bike that's worth more than most people's used cars? That's not minimalism. That's not minimalist. That I would feel guilty of. They're starving children in Africa. Yeah, well, the mountain bike's not going to help starving children in Africa. So I would feel guilty about any sort of luxuries that I would bring into my life. And the same thing with fitness. Like, how little can I go with? Like, do I just kind of suppress myself? And that's kind of where this less is always better approach goes, is that it's a suppression of holding ourselves back, because sometimes more is going to be better. Sometimes, absolutely. I mean, look at my back over here. I've got far more calisthenics equipment back here than most commercial gyms do for just little old me. Right now, is most of that good for me? Is it beneficial? No, I hardly use most of it, but to some degree, some of it is going to be more beneficial. I have bought and acquired things that's like, wow, I'm really glad I got this. Did I need it? Did it go with a minimalist approach? Absolutely not. But was it beneficial? Absolutely. So therefore, should I have done it? For sure. Let's see what else we can bring on in. So with simplicity, it's more about achieving that objective rather than going after just a blind direction that we never hit a stopping point for. Tallest days, I started calisthenics before 4 months ago and can't increase my push-ups and pull-ups. I can do 3 strict pull-ups, but when I train it, I use bands. And I also do body rows. This is something I could do. Yeah, you're doing exactly what you want. So remember that when it comes to training on a fundamental level, just pulling movement. Okay, I don't care what the exercise is. Honestly, the exercise you do, not that important. Really isn't. What we do is fundamental movement patterns: rows, seated pull-ups, regular pull-ups, and stuff like that. The muscles are doing the same thing: elbow flexion, shoulder extension, maybe some scapular retraction kind of thing. So fundamentally, it's not really any different. So all you're doing when you change to different variations in calisthenics is you're just changing the resistance and the difficulty of the exercise. So you're modifying time and tension, because fundamentally that's all exercise boils down to, is just how much tension is in the muscle and how long is it there for. So that pull-up where you've got 3 pull-ups, a lot of tension. Awesome, great, good. Not a lot of time because you got a lot of tension there. But if you did like rows and you're like, dude, I could get 50 of these. Okay, a lot of time, very little tension. Okay, and all you're doing is manipulating those 2 variables. So as you want to increase reps, as your goal is stated, well, just getting better at the techniques will do that. Doing better rows, doing better pull-ups and stuff like that, getting more stable and stuff, practice. You're 4 months in, you're barely even beginning. I know when we start something, 4 months feels like a long time. Hell, when you start something, 2 years seems like a long time. But when you look back on it over the course of a training career, it's nothing. Like, I've been doing Taekwondo for almost 34 years now. I got my black belt when I was 16. And even then I look back, I'm like, dude, you've been doing this 10 years. That's nothing for a martial artist. Absolutely, you're not even getting started kind of stuff. So it's just our perspective of human nature. When we start something, several months feels like a long time, but it's you're growing, you still have a long way to go, which is awesome, which means you have a lot of progress. So as I always give my same advice though. When you want to do more reps, you have to do the reps you can do better. More range of motion, better control, better tension control in the muscles. Make sure those shoulders are packed and stuff. Better reps lead to more reps. If your reps don't get better, you can't do more. It's as simple as quality leads to quantity. So I would even say, I give people all the time, I do what I call freeze workouts. You're not allowed to do any more reps for the next 6 weeks. Even if you could do it, don't. 3 pull-ups, you're limited to that. Okay, so hang on. This isn't minimalism though. I'm not saying do less. I'm saying only do those 3, and you do those 3 as hard as you possibly can to the very best of your ability. In the rows, how many rows are you getting? 15? Good, 15. You're locked at 15. No more than 15. So what that does is it forces your attention into, I guess I've got to progress in other ways. Because there's a ton of ways you can progress. Weight and reps are just 2 variables. My book, Smart Bodyweight Training, I've got 9 variables. And that's even still barely scratching the surface. So you want to focus on the proficiency because that's all you can do when you can't add. And with the increase in proficiency, those reps will go right on up, right as rain. All right, so following up here, Rita asks, how to increase muscular work capacity? I'm strong at pull-up bars, but can't do more when I was doing a month ago, same power. So yeah, so work capacity, again, is just those two variables, time and tension. So if we can't increase time, okay, like doing more repetitions, then you have to increase tension. It's the only two options you got. Those are the only two things you have. Every variable you could consider are just those two things. So like I was saying, if you freeze tension, then you increase, or freeze time, then you increase tension. And a lot of ways you can do this. You can more range of motion, pulling harder, spending a little more time in the more difficult position is another way you can kind of increase time as well, because you're increasing the amount of time in the difficult position. So instead of doing a pull-up where you're up and down, up, squeeze, and then down is another way to go about it. Making sure that you're not changing your body position. Another thing that I always recommend folks do, and I talked about this in my latest video on self-coaching, is how is your technique breaking down throughout the set? Okay, so for a technician, every repetition is very different. For like, okay, I did this push-up. Okay, I had a little more weight on the inside of my hands. Did the next push-up, oh, my right shoulder came up about 3 millimeters. Do another push-up, oh, okay, my chin came down about 2 centimeters and stuff. Every set or every repetition is like a snowflake. But naturally, as you get fatigued, the quality goes downhill. So I don't know how it's going downhill, but that's the thing you want to focus on. And usually, like a lot of times with pull-ups, it's range of motion. So it's like chest to bar, chin to bar, okay, nose to bar, okay, I'm going down. Like I'm not getting as much range. That's what you work on. Fight the technical erosion. And you write it down in your log because you are keeping a log, right? And you say, okay, my last 3 repetitions, I couldn't get my chest to the bar. There you go. No more repetitions, but increase, because the work capacity of your muscles is governing the quality of those repetitions. If you go from, let's say you got 5 pull-ups and only the first 2 are to the chest, to the bar, but then over the course of the next couple of weeks, then you're like, all of them are chest to the bar, you've increased your muscular work capacity. Even though on paper, same weight, same repetitions and stuff, you're asking your muscles to do more work in each repetition. And that's another way, the way I usually like to tell people, that's how you work your work capacity. I will add weight and reps as a very last resort. Absolute last, like I will do it if I absolutely have to. I'm perfectly happy if I'm lifting the same weight, if I was lifting weight other than my body weight, for the same reps for the next 5 years, and never, you should see my workout logs and they're a carbon copy one day after the next. Awesome. Because I want the quality of the reps to be increasing. And at the very last result, I'm like, I got nowhere else to go, but I got to add resistance. I got to add repetitions. There we go. And try not adding at that point. Try not making progress at that point. It's a total reversal in the attitudes. Alex, coming on. Hey, Matt, can you show how you modified the iso chain by using a strap instead of the chain? I have an iso chain, but the chain is so inconvenient. That's why I added the strap. Would you love to make mine like yours? So did I do a video on this? I sent a video to Paul Wade about it, actually. And I was like, dude, this is what I did. Am I on the right track, or did I just do something really stupid? And like, because you never know. Anytime I modify equipment, there's a little voice in the back of my head. It's like, well, this seems obvious. This seems like it's something that is a good idea, but I'm not designing that equipment. So, you've got a team of engineers who are designing equipment. They've probably spent far more time in a single day designing the iso chain than I've thought since I've had it. So they probably already thought of that idea. And they're like, okay, we tried this. This was a really bad idea. It's very, very unsafe or whatever. So I wrote Paul Wade going like, am I wrong on this? Like, what am I missing? This seems a hell of a lot better. And he basically wrote back, he's like, well, it's a good idea, but it does have its downsides and disadvantages. But here's a couple things that I have learned is, one, yes, it's a hell of a lot easier. What I use is a seatbelt webbing link from Strapworks. It's 1.5 inch wide with a 1.5 inch, or I think technically it's a 2-inch cam buckle, but the inside is 1.5 inches. So it's very, very durable. I use seatbelt webbing because it's very lightweight, it's very compact, and it does not stretch at all, which is kind of not what you want on that, because it doesn't stretch, so I attach it to the spring. But I have heard some people say, well, if you use regular nylon, you get a little stretch in the nylon, so it's like having the spring, but I'd need a carabiner to attach it to the plate, and that's just the same thing as the spring. So it's seatbelt webbing, 1.5 inches wide, cam buckle strap, and how long is that? I think it's 12 feet long, because of course it doubles on itself, so you want to make sure it can go high enough. Maybe 13, 14 inches feet long, and I have a triangular carabiner that attaches to the cam buckle, and that gives me the ability to adjust it real quick. I love it that way. Very, very quick and easy. But again, I don't know if it's a good idea or not still. I just know it's a good idea for me. So anyway, when we are talking about going with simplicity, we are trying to achieve an objective rather than go in a certain direction. Because sometimes an objective is easier to hit by adding to it. More exercises, more sets and reps, more food, more equipment, more. Sometimes it is easier to get to what you want with more. And if you have a minimalist attitude, or less is always more, you're actually running away from your objective. But at the same time, you can just bypass that objective entirely if you don't know what it is. That's why goals are so crazy important, to recognize what you want and to always be asking yourself, is this worth it? Because that's what screws people over. When you're going for more, you get screwed over, not because having a garage full of Ferraris and being able to deadlift a house isn't beneficial. It is. It's great, like I would know. But the more we pursue more, the higher the cost those things come to us. So building like 10 pounds of muscle doesn't take a whole heck of a lot as far as the cost goes. But eventually you're going to get to a point where it's going to cost a boatload to get to the limits of your ability. We're talking workouts that take over your entire life, diet habits that compromise your ability to have a social life. Like, I can't go out and eat tonight. I've got to eat exactly this food, exactly this time, exactly this way. No, I can't see you guys for ramen and pizza tonight or whatever, right? So the more you go after, the higher the costs get. But it's exactly the same thing with going with less. Less. Eventually, those costs start mounting up. So this is a common example I bring to the diet world, where people are like, okay, I want to get my diet in shape. I'm gonna stop drinking soda, and I'm not gonna eat the Snickers bar for afternoon snack every time. I'm gonna have like a protein shake or something, whatever, right? And it's like, I'm starting to feel better, looking a little better, I'm feeling a little better, I'm starting to get into push-ups. This is good. But the mistake that a lot of people make with diet is like, okay, so I cut out the soda, cut out the Snickers bar, and then you start going into rabbit holes on the internet, and it's like, okay, this stuff is bad because of sugar. And before you know it, you're like, I can't eat strawberries anymore. Apples are terrible for you. I once had a conversation with a client, with a 40-minute conversation on the merits of whether she should eat strawberries or blackberries. And we're looking up sugar contents and what kind of sugar and how much of it is fructose. And eventually I just got to a point of like, do you really think this matters? We just spent 40 minutes trying to figure out whether or not blackberries are healthier than strawberries for you. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's going to matter whatsoever. We've just wasted this 40 minutes. Thank you very much. And that's what ends up happening with minimalism, is cutting back is going to help you so much, but at some point it's going to start costing you. Cutting back on carbs, I feel a little better. I feel good and stuff. Eventually it's like, why can't I have the endurance to run a 10K? Why do I feel like crap whenever I'm working out? And why can't I sleep very well? I'm having trouble sleeping. Every habit is usually about adding or taking something away. And it's only going to help you to some point. There's a point there where this is going to be good, but only to some point. Building muscle and strength is another example. An athlete, like, I started deadlifting, I'm feeling really good, performance is going up in track and field. This is awesome. Great, but that's only going to help you so much. And I know a lot of the attitudes out there are like, more is always better for strength. No, there's a point where it's going to start hurting your performance. I would know. It's like, well, my back hurts a lot. I need a bottle of Advil to get out of the bed in the morning. My legs feel slow and sluggish, whereas they used to be faster and everything like that. There's some point where it's not going to help you anymore. We always want to keep an eye out for that, because otherwise, again, you go right past your destination. And it's not to say that more can't be more beneficial, but we always want to make sure we're looking at it from beneficial relative to what cost, though. Relative to what cost. Yes, you could potentially maybe build 3 more pounds of muscle, but what's that going to cost to your lifestyle, your diet, your energy expenditure, your gym and stuff like that? When you're a pro athlete, 1% of improvement can make a big difference in your legacy and your performance and your income and all that sort of thing. But for average guys like us, 1%, if it costs twice as much, it's not worth it. It just simply isn't worth it. So that's why a lot of times when we look at something that's like, is more always better, less always better, it's not a question of, is it better, but is it worth it? That's really what we want to be addressing, because a lot of times it's not going to be worth it. And there's a lot of power that comes from recognizing that. A lot of power that comes from recognizing that. Because then you can be like, yeah, I'm, like when I was racing mountain bikes in college, I was a hell of a lot faster than I am now. But the cost of it was so flippin' high that I eventually stopped. And like, it's not worth it. It's much more worth it for me to just go and mountain bike. And I'm like at 80% of the speed and power I have now, which is great, but I have a hell of a lot more fun. And it doesn't cost me nearly as much. Here's a very good general question here. Matt, what was your biggest problem and how did you solve it? Oh, biggest problem, all those stupid ones in school. You got a train leaving from Dallas going 80 miles an hour. Those were, I hated those damn things. Biggest problem, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't really know. But I think this was a big one, though, because I was always trying to play small. I was always trying to subdue anything that I felt was reaching and helping me grow a little bit. If someone gave me a compliment, I wouldn't take it. I mean, you just compliment like, dude, you got a nice shirt on. I was like, this thing is a piece of crap kind of thing. I couldn't take a compliment. And a lot of that stems from self-esteem and insecurity issues that I've had for most of my life. But this past year, I've done things that I never would have done or allowed myself to do. I bought a mountain bike that was stupid expensive. I bought a whole ski package rather than saying, I need new skis. I'm going to buy everything. So I spent a lot of money I didn't need to spend, and I never would do that. I mean, it'd be at the point where we would go grocery shopping and it's like, oh, that's my favorite ice cream. Get some. No, I don't want to do it. Like, I wouldn't allow myself to have any sort of luxuries, I thought, because again, minimalist. I got to be as small as possible kind of idea. And also just, I think, feeling like you have the ability to grow. You deserve to grow. You deserve to advance and progress and develop yourself. Now, that was a feeling I didn't have for a very long time. And I think a lot of it's just kind of being able to make peace with the fact that your benefit doesn't necessarily come at someone else's cost. If I buy a mountain bike that is worth more than many used cars, that doesn't have anything to do with starving children in Africa. The bike shop now has that money. Talk to them about a donation kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that's the way to go about it. Bergon Journey, good to see you again. Good to see you again. Hey, Matt, do you think using mental pre-workout like progressive trance, smelling salt, THC to prime the nervous system a good idea, or going to fade over time? So when it's an artificial thing, I would hazard to guess it's going to fade, just because our body adapts to everything, right? We're always adapting to reach a homeostatic state with whatever you use. So this is, one of the things that people say, I don't use pre-workout stuff, because at first it's great, but then you get back into homeostasis using it, and then you become dependent on it. And so I do believe, though, in priming that pump, but that's why I use isometrics and the shift work and stuff in grind style calisthenics. It's a neural primer, but it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say habit forming, because it's good to be in the habit of using that. I put up a video yesterday on my Instagram of me doing a chest neural primer with the iso chain, and then right into weighted dips there on the trings, and I was lifting more weight than I usually do because I was doing weighted dips. It felt amazing. Awesome. My chest is a little sore today. Love it. So that's my idea of a neural primer. Now, of course, here I am. I'm drinking my Monster energy drink. I like my Fast Lane tea. It's a little bit of a kick up with caffeine and stuff. Do I depend on it? No. Like, I don't feel like I need that stuff to work out at all. So it's not something I do normally before a workout. So that's always what we want to look at is, what am I okay with always having? That's always the question. Okay, this is a habit I'm adopting, but am I okay with always having to do this? Because sometimes the cost and stuff may be very high. It's like, are you okay with always having to do it? I can't keep that up. I can't keep doing that all the time. It's like, okay, then maybe we need to modify it a little bit. But it's the dependence that we're looking at here. So with stuff like that, I'm wary that you may form a bit of dependence, because what becomes an advantage at first becomes normal after time, and then you have to have it. I used to know several people when I worked at CAC. I mean, we had like 30 trainers on staff. A lot of them were using pre-workout and stuff like that. And then they'd be like, I forgot pre-workout. I'm out of pre-workout. Should I even work out? It's like, oh, that was a red flag for me. Like, oh boy, because now you're saying I can't work out unless I have this stuff. And that's a risk I wouldn't be willing to take. But you give me an iso strap push-ups and stuff like that, or a bench press, and then I can do harder push-ups. Now we're talking. That's something I can get right on for things. So here's a good point. Champ in the making. Minimalist approach to me is not relying too much on equipment. I hear that. And that was a big thing for me, because I got my start in the fitness field working with equipment, selling home gyms, fixing home gyms. I could take down and repair a treadmill with my eyes closed, kind of thing. By the time I was done, it was like 11 years in the fitness equipment field. So my first introduction to fitness was that equipment gets you in shape. So if you want to be in better shape, you need more and better equipment. And it got to the point where it was like, I would plan out, like my fantasies would be, I would plan out my ideal home gym. I want like a 10,000 square foot home that's just home equipment kind of thing. Because I needed like 15 different cable attachments in order to work my triceps. I need 15 and 6 different types of bench press angles in order to adequately work my chest and stuff like that. I thought I needed all of that equipment. But then I started to fall into following folks like Zach Evanish, where I'd be like, okay, for an adequate leg day, I need hack squat, and I need leg press, and I need leg extension, and I need hamstring curl, and I need all this stuff in order to have an adequate leg workout. But then I would read emails where he'd do like hill sprints and goblet squats with a rock, and he'd be like, dude, my legs are pumped. I'm like, how is this guy getting a good workout? He just got a rock and a hill. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So then I started to go in the other direction, right? It's like, do I really need a leg press? Do I really need leg extensions? Do I really need this? And I started to pare down. But then I got to the point where I was like, all I need is a tree limb. Like, don't even give me a pull-up bar kind of thing. And I could make it work. But in all honesty, like, sometimes equipment does really be helpful. Like these rings from Duonomic that I mentioned at the beginning of it. Do I need these? No. But do they give me a really good workout and they are a blast to use? Absolutely. So I don't depend on these. I don't depend on the equipment, but I sure as hell like using them. And therein lies the rub, is as long as you don't have a dependence on it, I see no reason why you shouldn't have it. Again, I got that fancy, expensive mountain bike in the closet. Do I depend on it to stay in shape? Absolutely not. And, if there was some weird, thing, law passed down, anybody on a bicycle will be punished by death. And it's like, oh, geez, kind of thing. Will it impact my fitness? Not at all. Like, I don't depend on that mountain bike. I just love riding it. That's why I have it. So that's the thing we want to have, is you can have a ton of stuff. It's the dependence on it that usually gets us kind of screwed on over. Aiden Ryan, how's it going? Hi, I have read you should breathe in when going down and out when going up in a push-up. However, my lungs don't seem to allow me to breathe fully this way. Should I train myself to breathe this way? I would say don't worry about it. See, oxygen, we have different levels of respiratory exchange. You have the respiratory where you're breathing in. You have the respiratory level of the exchange of oxygen for carbon dioxide in your lungs. But you also have cellular respiration. And this is cyclical and just constantly ongoing. So that's really what's important. It's not the, superficial respiration with what you're breathing in your nose and in your mouth and things like that. It's your cellular respiration. And as long as you are getting in enough oxygen and exchanging it at a proper rate, that's all that really matters. So I would say just breathe, however the hell you want to breathe, and this also happens when, that technical erosion, we start going slower. It doesn't make any sense if you're doing push-ups and then you got a couple grinders and you're like, kind of thing. And that rep takes you like 3 or 4 seconds. If you breathe out and you're done, like you got to breathe in. So, breathe. You can have your breathing separate from your movement if necessary. It doesn't have to be inadequately linked. And more than anything else, it doesn't make any sense to force yourself to train or eat or breathe or do anything that pulls you out of alignment with what you should be doing for your goals. So if you're forcing yourself to breathe a certain way and it just doesn't seem to be increasing your energy level and your ease and use, and it's just one more thing that you have to deal with, I say get rid of it. And that's one of the things that a lot of times minimalism is about. Get rid of stuff, get rid of. Yes, get rid of stuff, absolutely, but only if it's holding you back. Okay, if it's going to be holding you back in some way, by all means, get rid of it. But if it's not holding you back, be it a habit or a food or something like that, I don't see any reason why you should really get rid of it. Like I've got a cupboard full of chocolate chip cookies there. Is that going to hold me back? Absolutely not. No difference at all in really my physique or my performance or my body composition if I have those cookies or not, because I know how to eat them in a healthy way and stuff, which basically means not eating all of them in one sitting. But, if I can do that without detriment, then why force myself to have a more minimal diet? And you're like, I don't eat processed foods. Well, if you don't have to get rid of it, why? Because there's a cost to getting rid of those cookies, namely not having my cookies. I want my cookies. Sean coming on asking, hey, Matt, if when you're around other weightlifters, do you miss doing any of it? Or getting the feeling like you're missing out on something because you're not deadlifting, let's say. If not, why not? And absolutely not. Because, again, I look at things from a fundamental perspective. It's not about the exercise or the tool you're using. It's about what am I accomplishing on a fundamental level. So when I'm doing, my bridges or my pull-ups and stuff, I'm focusing on what are my muscles do. I don't care about the exercise. I don't care about calisthenics versus weightlifting and stuff. That's all just noise. It's distracting. And most of the time, it's a complete waste of time and energy. Trying to be like, should I do one or the other and stuff like that really doesn't matter because it has almost no bearing whatsoever in your goals. Instead, it's what are you doing on a fundamental level, because that's what matters. Fundamentally, I want to progressively work my muscles, my biceps, so they flex my elbow against resistance. I don't care if it's a weight machine, a band, a dumbbell, whatever. It really doesn't matter, especially if it doesn't matter to you. So when you get more based in a fundamental approach to diet and exercise, the more the details you find don't matter. Like again, back in the day when I was obsessed with fitness equipment, oh boy, if you gave me a tricep rope and it didn't flex the right way, like it was kind of a stiff tricep rope, my whole tricep workout is completely ruined because I don't have the right kind of tricep rope, right? Because that was more of a superficial method-based approach. But now I'm fundamental. I'm like, dude, straighten your arm against resistance. I don't care what you're doing. It doesn't matter. And that's the thing is I look at weightlifters or people on solo flex, or do they even make solo flex? I meant Bowflex or gadgets and gizmos and stuff. And this is how I avoid Fomo too. Because the only reason why you get a result is because of what's happening on the fundamental level. And if you're getting successful at building muscle, losing weight or whatever, you're not doing anything different. It's just different flavors. And so in that regard, it's kind of like having this beautiful, wonderful, aged, marinated steak. And you're like, this is the best steak. And oh my gosh, this is so good. And then you look over the table next to you and they're eating like sushi. And you're like, oh, sushi. Oh, I don't want this. I want that. It's like, why? It's like, enjoy what you have or order surf and turf, have both kind of thing. But when you understand things on the fundamental level, you realize, yeah, like enjoyment wise or protein wise, especially, like they're not doing anything different. So why covet that? Because there's no difference. If someone's doing deadlift and their spinal erectors are going nuts, and I'm doing bridges and my spinal erectors are going nuts, there's no difference. And then it just boils down to preference. Like, what do you like? What do you prefer to do? Well, my bridges lately have been going like gangbusters. Oh my God, it feels amazing. I feel like I'm finally unlocking some postural things that have been plaguing me for a long time. So it just boils down to, what do you like? Because ultimately, it really doesn't matter one way or the other, because it's all the same thing. And that's where the objective thing comes into play. From a fundamental level, it's really like, here's the target. Now do whatever the hell you want, however you want to do it, to just accomplish that target. So getting back to fundamental objectives, like we were talking before, you want to lose weight, you have to have more calories going out than going in. Okay, that's your objective. I don't care how you do it. You could eat like a pig, but still, do tons of cardio. Yes, you can outrun a bad diet or outtrain a bad diet. I do it all the time. Most people do. If you want to get bigger with muscles and stuff, you have to challenge your muscular work capacity, time and tension. How much tension and how much time. Increase that over time. I don't care what exercises you're doing, because honestly, it doesn't matter. It matters to you if you're like, but I love dumbbells. I don't want to do calisthenics. I love it. Okay, then it matters. Then do dumbbells. But that's the only reason why it matters. It's not like there's something special about free weights versus machines, as I used to always think when I was on those tricep things. I'm like, this is the best tricep rope on the market. Therefore, anything else is not going to build your triceps. No, that's superficial stuff. So work capacity, increasing time and tension variables, and then performance. If you want to improve your performance, you've got to learn the variables of what makes you a good pitcher or good golfer and work on those. Want to have a healthier diet? Satisfy your appetites better. It's not going to be healthy because you don't eat chocolate chip cookies and you eat kale. That's not what makes a good healthy diet. A good healthy diet is what satisfies your primal appetites. Is it giving you good nutritional support, energy support, enjoyment and satisfaction, and it's satisfying your hunger? That's what makes it good. I don't care what you're eating. You could be vegan, paleo, or just say, to hell with it all. I don't even care about dieting. I'm just going to eat whatever the hell I want, like I do. And that's what's going to get you onto those objectives. I should make a podcast about that, the fundamental objectives of training and diet. Just this is what you should focus on, kind of thing. Let's see, what else can we go with, Sean? Until I hear about someone getting so big from eating strawberries that they couldn't leave their house, then I'll stop eating them. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Anecdotal evidence kind of thing. I had a trainer one time try to convince me for the longest time that bananas were bad for me, because I like to eat bananas in the morning, a little bit of potassium sugar rush kind of thing. And he's like, bananas are terrible for you. I'm like, dude, once I run into somebody who's like obese from bananas, then I'll take your things into consideration. But until then, I'm not going to worry about it. Dave asking about the ISO chain again. Hey, Matt, the ISO chain is out of our price range. How would you recommend tracking progress in force output? Oh, this is such a good one. Awesome, Dave. You're beautiful. So here's the thing, is the ISO chain gives you quantitative feedback, which is awesome, and it's great. But keep in mind that fundamentally, it doesn't really do that much different than any other form of strength training, which is why it works. Anything that comes down the pipe that's going to work is going to work for the same reason that everything else has worked. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. It just creates more progressive muscle demand or resistance on your muscles. And when we're working with the ISO chain, it gives us those auditory beeps saying if you produce enough tension or not. That's all there is to it. And when we lift a weight or we're pushing ourselves up off the floor or something, all we're doing is we're getting kinesthetic feedback. ISO chain is audio feedback. Dynamic exercise is kinesthetic feedback of, are you producing enough tension so that you move or the weight moves? That's the only difference. So here's the thing. If you don't have those beeps and you don't have those numbers, how do you know? Well, keep in mind that a lot of your progress as isometrics is subjective anyway. So how much do you feel the muscles contracting? Do you feel the muscles contracting? Do you feel them contracting with other things? For example, in the back muscle chain, the pull chain. This is a big thing I tell people is isometrics are great because a lot of times when we do any sort of vertical pulling motions, we're not engaging our back nearly enough, not even close. So I would, get a simple iso loop. That's usually what I recommend instead of the iso chain. It's just the iso, or the ISO trainer, excuse me, from WorldFit. Link is down below for that too, if you're curious. It's like $30. It's like nothing, but it's the most versatile isometric device out there. And yeah, how does the exercise feel? Because it should feel different. It doesn't matter if the numbers on that ISO chain are going up. If I don't feel my back engaging, it's still not working. Yeah, I can make those numbers increase, but that could still mean I'm just compensating and I have dysfunctional movement engagement patterns in my muscles. So that's one thing. And this stuff should be very obvious. I'm a very big believer that results in anything in fitness should be very, very obvious. What was I doing the other day? I did something the other day that had a very quick, because when I got into isometrics, I noticed a very big difference within 48 hours in how my body was responding to it. And that was with a bed sheet. I wasn't even using an ISO trainer. That was with a bed sheet. And in 48 hours, I'm like, whoa, okay, that feels better. Wow, those muscles are engaged. Wow, I feel stronger. Holy smokes, that's more tension and stuff. Like all this stuff is coming fast and furious. And anytime you're trying to find out if something effective, it should give you very positive feedback loops very, very quickly. It should be like, wow, okay, that is definitely a heck of a lot better. Oh, it's going to drive me nuts until 3 a.m., I'm sure. But that's the thing, is you want that sort of feedback mechanism, not the numbers going up or anything, but how does your body feel? So how does your body feel? And again, with the ISO chain that I was using, and then I was doing dips, with the weighted dips on my trings over there. Now, when I was on the ISO chain, I wasn't using the numbers. I wasn't using any feedback. I don't even know if I had it on, to be honest with you. I didn't care. I just want the muscles primed and engaged. Because then when I went over to the dips, I was like, whoa, these feel good. Okay, add another 10 pounds onto those weighted dips there because I'm feeling strong today. And that was enough right there. So you should feel the strength carry over to other things for sure. Absolutely. Good one from Michael. Hey, Matt, do you have a favorite balance exercise? Yeah, it's the one I mentioned in grand style calisthenics. I think I also did this in bodyweight training for martial arts as well. It's called standing on one leg and you circle the other leg around like this, and you don't touch down and you go in the other direction. If you want to make it a little harder, you can straighten the leg as well. But basically standing on one leg and moving the other leg, very, very good balance exercise because it works stabilities, of course. Stabilities, your stabilizers, and so on. Excuse me, Alex. And hey, Matt, I've been following you for 5 years now. Thank you very much. I'm amazed you could stand the sight of me and the sound of my voice for that long. Congratulations. You have a strong stomach. You're always positive in your videos. Thank you. I cannot imagine you being angry, but for some reason, I think it's scary. Yeah, believe it or not, especially growing up as a kid, I had a massive temper. Whoa, bad temper, and still kind of do. And it kind of scares me from time to time because I feel like, honest to God, I've never been in a fist fight. In martial arts, we fight and stuff, but that's not real fighting. But I've always been terrified of getting into a fight because a lot of people are like, oh, you're afraid of getting hurt. No, I'm afraid of what I'm going to do to the other guy because once I cross a line, I go off and I don't want to go to jail. Shivam coming in with his cues on minimalism gave me imbalances, plateaus, overuse, injuries, and much more. Well, then that too extreme of approach gets you nowhere. Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. And that's kind of what happens. Another common one that I run into a lot is powerlifting. I kind of did this myself for a while, thankfully not to the degree, but they're like, dude, bench, squat, and dead. That's all you need. And that's all they'll do. And bench, squat, and dead, and that's it. No matter what type of approach you use, it's inadequate, diet or exercise, because you're never going to cover all of your bases with any single thing. It's kind of like, putting a wall. As soon as you identify something with a name, it brings a fixed perception to it. I think in Taoism, they talk about this, and Bruce Lee talked a lot about his use of labels. Like the second you label something, you build a wall around it. You're like, this is what this is, and outside that wall, it's not. But when you have that wall, you have a finite amount of stuff you can do within it. And as a result, you're going to be limited. And this is what dogmas do. They limit you. And minimalism, I guess you could say, is a dogmatic approach. it's going to limit you. And I don't care so much if it's right or even effective. It's like, is it going to limit you where you don't want a limitation? So you can make something a foundation like bench, squat, dead. Okay, great. But what else do you have to fill in the gaps? And I'm not saying just add stuff ad hoc for the sake of adding stuff, but notice things like, okay, bench press. I don't have really good like scapular movement because they're always locked in that deadlift, and I'm not really scapular mobile and stuff, causing some issues and stuff. Okay, great. Let's get some bands and do some rear flies or a TRX or something like that. Or cat cow. Let's just warm up with some cat cows before your bench press. Whatever. It doesn't need to be much. But when you identify something that's lacking, that's holding you back, and then you can add something that is going to remove that limitation, but in an efficient way, like cat cows, nothing. You know, do this for 20 seconds. Great. Awesome. Takes nothing to do, but it can make a very big difference in how you're feeling about it. Then that's it. And by the way, I just remembered that thing that I was forgetting the other day. There's a psoas stretch. I should put this on Instagram that I learned the other day and started doing it. And within like 24 hours, it's like, oh, my hips feel better. Great. The second you get some sort of feedback like that, it's definitely telling you you're addressing something very good. All right, Satya, how's it going, my friend? Hey, Matt, how do I balance my calorie count in good entire setup? Sorry, little misprint there, not quite sure. Currently, I'm not sure if I am a calorie deficit to get rid of extra fat. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying here. So to be perfectly honest with you, like I don't really go by numbers with such things, because when it comes down to fundamentally what we need to do, what you need to do is not obey a number. You need to have that imbalance going on. Now, calorie balance, it drives me nuts when people are like, it's not as simple as calorie balance. Dude, there's nothing simple about calorie balance. It's ridiculously complicated and very hard to get a handle on. So that's why I don't even bother with it. And calorie counting sort of thing. I know it's good to kind of get an idea and stuff. Here's what I do. Keep your diet consistent, first and foremost. I don't care what it is. Have a donut every day for whatever, if you want donuts, eat donuts. If you like kale salads, eat kale salads. But just keep your diet somewhat consistent with what you're eating, how much you're eating, and all that sort of thing. And same thing with activity level, fairly basic activity level. Now, you want to be in a calorie deficit? Good. Increase either your expenditure by a noticeable amount or decrease your intake by a noticeable amount. Now, if you have regular, stable exercise and diet habits, then that should be easy to know without MyFitnessPal. Like, well, I usually have a foot-long sandwich for lunch every day. Well, I'll go with half that. Good. Now, what is the calorie number? I don't care. Fat, protein, whatever. I don't care. It's less. That's the only thing we got to worry about. It's less. Less than normal. What is normal? And then less than that. Same with activity level. More. It's more than normal. When I did my dips the other day, right, I added 10 pounds. How do I know I was added 10 pounds? I don't know what the weight was, of the vest I was using and stuff, but it was more than normal. And that's all that matters. When we are looking to kind of kick off some adaptation, it just needs to be different than normal. It doesn't matter what normal was. It just needs to be more or less than normal to get us closer to our objective, our fundamental objective in our training. So if you're looking to lose weight, for example, losing body fat, then yeah, you want more going out than going in. You can do that through activity. You could do it through diet. Sometimes it's easier one versus the other, maybe a combination of the two, but which one is normal? And if you don't know what normal is, do that first. Get to that state of normal diet, normal physical activity first, and then make that change. Michael, coming on, a couple last questions here. Hey, Matt, do you recommend a particular balancing exercise for overall balance training? Yeah, just that. I mean, again, we come down to specificity though, Michael. So fitness is always about specificity. There's no such thing as strength or endurance and stuff, because the body always adapts to the exact specific adaptation to your scenario. That's why no one's ever going to be adequately trained for everything, right? I can do this all day long, stay on one leg, but you tell me to plank, like a bird dog, and I'm like, I'm all over the place. So balance for what is what I would ask. Stability for what? That's what we want. So when we're trying to improve performance, like I was talking about a fundamental objective earlier, when our objective is performance in something, we want to be clear on what that performance is. Okay, so if you're a runner and your objective is, I want to be a faster runner, is it really being a faster runner? Because this happens all the time when I train people one-on-one. They tell me one thing, but they actually mean something completely else. And I've learned over years, I've got to really get them clear on their objectives, because if not, we could spend the next 6 months training them hard, get to the objective they told me, when in reality, they wanted something else. And that is not a place you want to be in. So balance for what? So you're training exactly for that. The more clear you get on your objective, the more you can cut out all the fluff that doesn't really matter. And I guess that's kind of the minimalism approach that a lot of people have, is the more clear you get on what you want, the more you can cut out the stuff, because most of the stuff out there isn't going to be effective for you. I'm just going to put that point blank. Most exercises, most methods, most diet habits, most advice on the internet is going to be a complete waste of your time. Okay, not even a complete waste. They're going to steal from you, like my episode I did last week on getting ripped off. Most stuff out there is going to steal time and money and energy and effort away from you, because it has nothing to do with what you want to accomplish. But if we're not clear on our goals, you don't know that. And you're going to wake up one day and be like, I've been putting in all this work and I'm not even anywhere clear of what I want. So the more clear you get to what you want, the more you can hack out the stuff that's not very essential. All right. Last couple of ones here. Thank you very much, Jose. Thank you very much, Sean, for the donations. I appreciate it very much. I have to go and make a replica of the Great Wall of China out of paper mache, but let me get to a couple more here. What is minimum time you recommend for an isometric exercise? For me to know if it's enough, or should I move to an easier progression? Oh, very good. So again, it boils down to time and tension, my friends. That's everything in strength training in general. More time, less tension, and vice versa. So for me, I just kind of go with the package time on the iso chain. When you get the iso chain, it's preset for 6 seconds. Excuse me. So I hold for 6 seconds. And that, to me, that feels like a good amount of time to hold a real hard contraction. But if you want more stamina, of course, it's going to be longer period of time, kind of stuff. But I would say, probably around the 5 to 10 second mark is probably going to get most people where they want to go. 5 to 10 seconds. Unless, again, you have a clear objective of, I need to be able to hold a L sit for 30 seconds to win a bet, bar bet or something like that. Okay, 30 seconds then. But unless your objective is requiring a specific amount of time, I always look at isometrics as the development of tension and strength. And you're not going to want a lot of time for that because the more time you have, the less of that you're going to need. So I would say probably 5 to 10 seconds, 5 to 10 there, 6 seconds. I don't know why 6 seconds. I know they're referencing a lot of scientific literature, Dragon Door team. They've got a whole new research team and stuff to provide references for their isometric articles and stuff like that. And somehow 6 seconds became a standard in the literature for some reason. So yeah, take that for what it will. All right, Joe, a couple of last ones. Hey, Matt, I viewed some of your micro workout videos and I was wondering if I could apply that concept to stretching and flexibility. Absolutely. Micro workouts isn't specific to any type of training, actually. It's just, again, large reason why micro workouts work is it just gets clear on the objective. So the funny thing is, all of the strategies in micro workouts actually were never intended to save time and energy. Like all that stuff that I implemented, it wasn't at all to save time. It was just, oh, this is my objective. Oh, well, if that's the case, then all I need to do is X, Y, and maybe Z. And I guess that's all I need. Oh, well, that's quick, and that's why it works, is when you get really good at hammering in that nail, you don't need to hit it a whole lot because you're very good at it. So stretching, same thing. What do you want to stretch? Where's your flexibility and sort of thing? And yeah, just all you got to do is elongate that muscle a few times, and that gets the job done. All right. Okay, last couple. I'm just seeing if I miss anybody. But like I said, I should be running. But thank you, everybody, so much for coming on for another episode here, Red Delta Project. Again, check out the new Dynamic ring setup. I will be doing a review shortly. I'm just waiting on a couple of other little things from the company. But to put it into perspective, these things got me back into using rings. Like, I really like using rings now, again, which I never thought I'd say. So they're a bit beefier than your standard rings, well made, and the strap system that works with the duonomic handles. So anybody who's building a calisthenics gym in their apartment and stuff, and they're like, I can't put anything on the walls, I got no place to hang stuff, I don't want to do something big and expensive, like, a freestanding pull-up unit that's like $500 or something. That is, I would say, the way to go. So link is all down below for that. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on. We will do this again next week. And we'll do one on these fundamental objectives. Because, boy, when you understand those objectives, things get real simple, real fast, and a whole lot more fun as well. So thank you, everybody. I'll talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.